Hello everyone. Today we are going to start a new unit. We are going to start Unit 11. And Unit 11 is going to be all about how to take data that we might gather from something like a survey or just from information that's been provided to us, and how do we display it. So today we're going to look at how to report frequency, and we're going to look at three different kinds. But first we are going to look at a couple of bell ringers. So we need to remember all the way back to Unit 1. We talked about putting data in order from least to greatest, and we did this with mean, median, mode, and range. But this is going to be important. It's going to help us today in organizing our data. So let's put our data in order. Remember some of the tricks from class. Start with the smallest number, and then as you're going, cross it off just so you remember that you've used it. And that way, as I'm going, I can say, if I don't, I say, oh, I'm done. But remember, another trick is to say, how many numbers do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's why the crossing your numbers off is helpful. I've got 22, 23, 45, 61, 87, 91. Oh, I forgot 52. So 52 would go in here. And I could, since I wouldn't want to rewrite all of that, but I could just do that really easily. So with decimals, remember that we do have to look at two numbers out. So if there's only one, I'm going to put a 0 after it, because 7.3 is the same as 7.30. So I've got those two. So this, I'm going to start by looking at the first number after the decimal. And the smallest one here is 7.08. And if I have two numbers with the same number in the 10th spot, I would look at the next number after that, the number in the 100th spot. So next, So next we're going to cross out 7.25, and then 7.30, 7.62, and 7.90. Crossing those off, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I got enough. So hopefully that's a pretty easy reminder for you, but it's going to come in helpful today. So frequency tables, when we're gathering data from a survey or from a questionnaire, we need a way to display the data. So a frequency table is a table that lists each item in a data set with the number of times the item occurs. And so a frequency table is going to look like this. And I'll show you how we're going to fill this in. But basically what we end up doing is we do tally marks. And by tally, I mean doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, maybe, and then counting up the frequency. Now, number just means, like if the question was, how many pets do you have? How many people have 0? How many people have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 or more pets? And so this would be an example of how you would fill it in. The number is talking about what are we counting. You don't have to fill in the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was just an example. We're going to look at another example in the next slide. All right. So the students of Mrs. Trensky's history class took a 10-point quiz. Their scores are listed below. Make a frequency table of their responses. So it looks like I do have several 10s, so my maximum value is 10, and it looks like my lowest value is 2. So rather than giving each number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 their own box, I'm going to put some values together. I'm going to say if they got a 2 or a 3, a 4 or a 5, a 6 or a 7, an 8 or a 9, or if they got 10. And actually, we could put a 0 to 1 in there if we wanted to. I could have put that first, but what we would see there is that there was nobody, and so that would get a 0. So this, if there's no values there, that's optional, okay? All right, for the frequency table, later we'll look at what happens for some other displays. So 2 to 3, we've got how many values are between 2 and 3. And again, I'm going to cross them off as I go. I have 1, 2. I just see 2, so I've got 1, 2. I'm going to put a frequency of 2. Next, I've got 4 and 5. I have 1 there, there, there. Yep, that looks like it. So 1, 2, 3. So then I've got 6 and 7. So I'm going to go through and make my tally marks. 6 and 7, 6 and 7. And the idea is, some of you would be saying, can't I just go through and count how many there are rather than showing this tally mark sign? The idea is that what you can't see is that I can follow the number along with my finger. I can kind of track it along like this, and then when I get to 1, I can leave my finger here in this spot and put a tally mark. And so if I have a lot of data, more than what I see here, it's very helpful to do a tally rather than trying to remember, wait, was I at 126 or 132? I don't remember. And so the tally marks can help us keep track without trying to count to really high numbers. So here that looks like we had 8. Let's switch to orange. All right, we need 8 and 9. So got 1 there, got another. I'm going to go all the way across until I've gotten them all. I think it's very helpful to work in an order, like left to right. That's what I was doing, because it just keeps things organized. I haven't used dark blue. And then any 10s. So I'm going to cross that, that. Oh, and I have the one that I circled. I almost missed that. So I've got 3 of those. Now, here's a easy way to check your work. Just like when we were putting things in order from least to greatest, we can add up our numbers in the frequency table. So add up frequency numbers. Or add the frequency row values to check your work. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 up here. And if I do 8 plus 2 is 10, 3 plus 7 is 10, so that's 20 and 23. So that means that, yep, we accounted for everybody. So that's how to make a frequency table. A line plot is another way to display data. A line plot is a graph that shows the shape of a data set by stacking x's above each data value on a number line. And when filled in, it would look something like this. Each of these x's represent one occurrence of the value of 1, one occurrence of the value of 2. So this would mean that maybe if we're talking about the scores on a scale of 1 to 10, 4 people got a 9 out of 10. 1 person got a 1 out of 10. 3 people got a 5 out of 10. And it helps us to see the shape of the data and kind of where people are. We have a lot of people down here less than 6. And so if a teacher was looking at that, they might look at this data and say, I have a lot of people at the lower end of the number line, so maybe we need to do some review and redo a test. That's just one example. That's how I've used this kind of data in the past. So a library asks patrons how much they read in a day. The results are below. 10, da, 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 da. Now, I should not have used this number line. What I should do is create my own. So let's renumber this. Sorry, I should have used a different one. So it looks like we're counting by 5s. So I'm going to leave the 0 on there, but then I'm going to make this be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I'll go ahead and go up to 40 just because I have the space. And I think that your number line in your notes should look different. All right. So I'm going to go through and count how many people responded 0. Let's see, I've got no one. Okay. What about 5? All right, so here's 1. And it looks like that's it. All right, next I need 10. So let's change it up. We've got 1, 2, 3. Yep. Counting up 15. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not need 20s. 3, 4, 5. And notice they are getting stacked on top of each other. Each X kind of stacks the tower higher, if you will. 25, we've got 1. Oops. And 30. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's very aesthetically pleasing. I didn't mean to do that in rainbow order, but it worked out well. Now, what you could also do is use your frequency table. And use your values down here of 1 and 3. Make a frequency table of the values, sorry. Oh no, wait, it wasn't 9, it was 7. If you make a frequency table, then you don't have to go through a second time and count them. You can just say, oh, here's my frequency of each number, and then put an X for each one. All right, and the last way of displaying data that we're going to look at is called a histogram. And a histogram is a bar graph with no spaces between the bars. This is very important. So some bar chart looks like this, where it measures things, but they put space between the bars. In a histogram, once we have the first bar, they're going to be right next to each other, and there's going to be no space. And the height of each bar shows the frequency of data within that interval. So in other words, it's saying how many values does it have. It's kind of like if we were to draw a bar over each of these values. That's kind of what a histogram is doing. It's just drawing a bar over the line plot. Not quite the same, but that's kind of the idea of what we're trying to do here. And the intervals of a histogram have to be of equal size, and they can't overlap. So if I'm counting by 2s, then they all have to count by 2s. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So a group counts the number of chocolate candies and 22 bags of trail mix. And so we see that we have values here. So I went ahead and created an interval. I said, let's count by 20s. Now notice I'm going from 1 to 20, 21 to 40, and this number here is increasing by 20 each time. And so I didn't like say 1 to 20 and then 21 to 25. I'm counting by the same value each time. And if I go 1 to 20 here, it has to start at 21 on the next one. These numbers here cannot overlap, so I can't put 20 to 40 because then I would be counting 20 in 2 spots. So what I'm going to go through is make a tally and then count how many times do these values occur here. So you can do that too. I'm going to pause the video and let you try that. So I went through and counted up each of these values so we can see that there are 4 values here, 6, 7, 2, and 3. And I should have had another row here, but this one would be the 101 to 120. So I am going to count down here. I'm going to label my x-axis. So you can see I labeled it. I had to squish because I was running out of room, but I'm going to draw a bar. Now 1 to 20 had 0 values, so it does not get a bar. 21 to 40 had 4, so I'm going to go up to 4, and I'm going to do this for each of the values across. This is what your graph should look like when you fill in all those bars, no space between. Also, we should label our y-axis frequency to show that this is how many values are occurring between each interval.